Okay, so I can start.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. Audible, Aldrin?
Yes, yes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Swaranjeet Kaur Chima, Head Department of Botany, Guru Nanak Khalsa College. Welcome and thank you for joining for today's webinar, which is hosted by our Botany Department of Guru Nanak Khalsa College, Mumbai. Today's topic is biodiversity status in context of COVID-19. I'm thankful to our principal, Dr. Kiran Mangankar, and the management for encouraging us to host this webinar. Friends, as you know, biodiversity conservation and sustainability is very, very important. If we don't do this, we face such situations like the COVID-19 and many more in future. Just to make you aware, friends, I would recite a small poem which reads like this. धरती माँ करे पुकार अब और न करो अत्याचार मत करो गोद सुनी मेरी लौटा दो मेरा प्यार आहत हो रहे मेरे सीने में दे दो फिर से जान मेरे ही सीने से पलने वाले क्यों हो सच से अनजान माँ हूं तेरी मैं गैर नहीं जीवन हूं तेरा कुछ और नहीं क्यों हरियाली को मेरे आंचल से मुझसे छीन लिया गला घोंट कर ममता का मुझसे नाता तोड़ लिया जर्जर हो रही मेरी काया में फिर से भर दो जान देकर मुझको मेरा अस्तित्व लौटा दो मेरी पहचान. So friends, this was a small poem which is very much in context to today's topic. And friends, if you want to ask any questions, please put them in the live chat. We would like to take them questions later. And now I would request my colleague, Dr. Babita Rana, to please introduce today's speaker. Over to Babita.
Good morning to all the participants. Thanks, Shima ma'am, for your wonderful poem, falling really in context with the today's topic, and for your warm welcome. Today, our speaker for the national webinar is Dr. Daisy Batesh, a very humble and dedicated lady working as professor in Department of Botany, Punjab University, Chandigarh, with 21 years of teaching experience. She is specialized in ecology and environmental botany. There is a long list of her achievements in the field of research. Briefing a few, Madam has completed postdoc and recognized as scientist under CSIR pool scheme. She has been awarded with Rajiv Goel Young Scientist Award, Excellence in Research by UGC, and also honored by Elsevier for a top 50 most cited articles. She has completed many research projects under UGC, DST, and other funding agencies. Under her key research guidance, 25 students have been awarded PhD degree. She has more than 150 publications, which include research paper, books, edited books, and papers in the proceeding to her credit. A warm welcome, madam, and thank you for connecting us with from Chandigarh. Now I request Daisy Madam to take over the session and share her knowledge and experience in the relevance of today's topic. Daisy Madam.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the, first of all, nice introduction and also inviting me for this important event. I always love giving talks, but this is first of this kind that I'm giving it remotely from the digital sources. So once again, I thank the authorities of the college and all the people who are connected today. So today's talk is, as you know, much relevant these days. That is biodiversity status in context to COVID-19. I think all of you can see the presentation.
Not yet, ma'am.
Not yet.
No.
What happened?
Full screen. Go to full screen.
Yeah, I have done that. Just a minute. Yeah.
Share screen.
I have already done that. Share entire screen. It's not sharing. Okay.
Slideshow. Yes, ma'am. Make it slideshow.
Okay, it's fine.
Yes, fine, ma'am.
Yes.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, okay. Yes. So
Ma'am, you
today's
can
topic.
hide that sharing. Hide. Stop sharing के बाजू में जो hide है, you can hide that. Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yes, ma'am. Fine.
It's fine now.
Yes, ma'am.
So today's topic is very relevant for the present times, that biodiversity status in context to COVID-19. We all know about, I think, biodiversity, and presently we are, the humanity is in crisis because of the very small, tiny virus that has threatened the humanity world over. So briefly, because there may be many students, I would like to introduce in the biodiversity, which is sum total of life on Earth. And biodiversity is, as we all know, built out of three intertwined features. That is genetic diversity, species diversity, and community diversity. All these three intertwined features are necessary for life. Genetic diversity has its own importance, species diversity has its own importance, community diversity, that is structuring of various communities in an ecosystem, which is a macro level of biodiversity, is still very important. So all levels, these three intertwined levels of biodiversity have their own importance. Now there is another level, I think whether we have heard about it or not, I am not sure. So this is the fourth level of biodiversity, is molecular level. As you know, plants, animals, microorganisms, they have unique, chemicals within them, which even the chemists fail to synthesize. So nature has given us such a beautiful array of chemicals with unique structures, which are very useful to us. They act as source of drugs, they act as antioxidants, they boost our immune system, and so many utilities we take from these molecules, which we extract from the biodiversity. So people say that there are four levels of biodiversity. Three are the conventional levels, and fourth level is the molecular level. And once a plant becomes, or animal becomes extinct, animals do have less variety of chemicals, but plants are special in their very rich phytochemistry. And once that plant is lost, we also lose those unique structures with that plant. So all the four levels, therefore, of biodiversity are very, very important. The three levels, the fourth level, which has not been accepted much, but it has been suggested that this is also one of the very important level of biodiversity. Now, biodiversity is nothing new. We have been talking of life right from our, education, right? When we study, we used to talk about taxonomy, different types of plants, different types of animals, different types of microorganisms. It was during 80s that the term biological diversity, late 80s, was coined, and it was thought at that time. Not many discussions were being conducted on environment, and it was at that time thought that why not the biological part of the environment should also be given importance, and biological diversity became a buzzword in the late 80s or early 90s, so much so that in 1992 World Earth Summit, which was held in Rio de Janeiro, biological diversity, or its short form biodiversity, was the main theme. It was thematic, and a lot many discussions were held on depleting biodiversity at that time. That Convention on Biological Diversity, what we call CBD, that came into being. And according to CBD, biodiversity is variability among all living organisms from all sources, including inter alia, terrestrial, marine, and other aquatic ecosystems, and ecological complexes of which they are part. And this includes diversity within species, that is genetic diversity, diversity between species, that is species diversity, and of ecosystems, that is macro or ecosystem level of diversity. Now, needless to tell you, CBD was all focused on conservation of biological diversity. So its main goal was to conserve depleting biodiversity, to create awareness among people to use biodiversity and its components in a sustainable manner, and also fair and equitable share of benefits from the use of genetic resources among different societies. That was also one of the goal of CBD. Now, coming to how many species are there on Earth, there is lot many, so much of disparity as how many species are there on the Earth. But most of the reports, they point that we have around 8.7 million species, with lower estimates as low as 3.5 million, upper estimates maybe as high as more than 100 million. They have been quoted, but 8.7 species is consensus, and different new species are being added, and of course biodiversity is depleting. Many more species nowadays are falling under different categories of risk, and they are becoming extinct also. So that is in nutshell about the species which are found on Earth. So Earth has a very, it's the only planet where life exists. As we all know, it's a blue planet, and it has biodiversity richest areas, and it has areas which are less biodiversity. Now, some of the richest areas, as we all understand, are the tropical rainforest. And among the tropical rainforests, who doesn't know about Amazon forests, which are found in South America? And 60% of the Amazon forests, they are found in Brazil, and they are biodiversity rich areas. They provide about 20% of oxygen on Earth, and that's why people also call them as lungs of planet. Although the story now is different, these forests are under so tremendous pressure and are depleting at a faster rate also. So we have very rich biodiversity areas on the Earth, mostly the tropical areas. And of course, in the aquatic system also, we have very rich diversity of species. And equivalent to tropical rainforests, we have the coral reefs in the aquatic system, which are many times referred to as the rainforests of the aquatic bodies. So these are very rich areas. Now, in contrast to that, we come to the deserts, cold desert or the hot deserts. They are biodiversity poor areas, as we all know. Now, in the present context, the native ecosystems, they have become very, very important, because native ecosystems are the ones where biodiversity evolve. We have variety of animals, we have variety of plants in the native ecosystems, which take their food, shelter, reproduction from the natural habitats. They are highly adapted to the local conditions. Now, not only the native ecosystems, even the semi-natural areas like hedgerows, buffers, roadsides, shelter belts, they are also important sources of biodiversity. And what is more important nowadays is, because of the fast growth, because of the industrialization, urbanization, these rich areas, native ecosystems, they have become disconnected from one another. They have seen a lot of habitat fragmentation, and connecting among them is very, very important. So if we want to restore biodiversity and we want to progress at the same time, we need to have connectivity in the fragmented ecosystems. That is one aspect that we can restore the biodiversity. Now, within a native ecosystem, some locations, they are very supportive of the biodiversity, while other locations, they have less biodiversity. So generally, as we all understand, dry areas have less biodiversity, dry locations, and if riparian areas are there, they have good number of species. So native ecosystems have great relevance, great importance, because they are unique to a region, and there the evolution has occurred in a manner that only those species have survived there, which are quite adapted to those regions. Unfortunately, native ecosystems are now no longer native, as we have brought so many exotic species from the other areas, and we have tried to change or shift their species structure. So that is the story. I'll come a little later. Now, structural diversity in an ecosystem is very important. Every ecosystem has a diversity which form its structure. So they have a typical zonation, they have a typical stratification. And these stratifications and zonations, they provide habitat to different species. They provide food, they provide shelter to different species. And in a given area, always mixture of uncultivated and natural areas have greater structural diversity. So maintaining structural diversity of the ecosystems is very, very important if we want to preserve the biodiversity. Now coming to the healthy ecosystems, which have great relevance these days, because health of ecosystem is at stake. We have destroyed the ecosystems to such an extent that they have become unhealthy. They're not fit for living. Their airs are polluted, their waters are polluted, their species are lost. So maintaining healthy ecosystem, therefore, is very, very important. And what should be the characteristics of healthy ecosystems? Needless to say, it should have high species diversity. It should be less degraded. It should be less disturbed. Prominent forest cover it must have. Lesser number of invasive species it should have, and productive plant communities that maintain the health of the ecosystem. So if we have a rich cover of biodiversity, undisturbed biodiversity in an ecosystem, it helps in maintaining the health of the ecosystem, because different components, they perform their functions, and ecosystem keeps on going with the driving force from the sunlight. So maintaining healthy ecosystems, therefore, is the most important aspect of the ecosystem. So it must have a rich cover of biodiversity. So biodiversity has great role to play in maintaining the health of the ecosystem. Now, coming to the biodiversity values. We all know biodiversity is very important for us, but when we divide its values, or so-called ecosystem services, presently we call these values as ecosystem services. So we categorize them as use values, non-use values. Non-use values are of great significance for future, whereas use values are those which we are presently exploring different uses of biodiversity. For example, direct use values are like a biodiversity source of food, fish and meat and fuel wood we get from biodiversity, timber and other building material, medicinal plants, edible, wild fruits and plants, animal fodder. We directly consume these things. We directly take these things from biodiversity. In addition to this, we have many indirect use values also. It's useful to us presently, but we are not using biodiversity directly, but indirectly. Like biodiversity helps us in flood control, in maintaining the soil fertility, in controlling the pollution, in providing drinking water, drinking clean, pure water, recreational and tourism, which was until the crisis started, which was a very important component of our economy. Also, education. Biodiversity provides us education. We take inspiration from biodiversity. We use them for exploring new arenas in science. It provides many biological services like pest control, pollination. Then biodiversity has also optional value, which presently we are not doing, but in the future we can explore different medicines from the biodiversity. We can explore different genetic resources. We can explore we can get biological insights. We can look for food from biodiversity. If, let us say, all food is lost, then we can have some building supplies, we can have water supplies. So these are all optional value of the biodiversity. Sorry. Is it all right? Hello?
Ma'am, keep it on the
Ma'am,
slide.
slideshow. Slideshow.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Slideshow. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
There was some message in between. I'm sorry for that. Then, we have existence value, optional value. I have discussed various options for the future. Then biodiversity has non-use value in the form of existence value. Like we are maintaining cultures of the local people. The biodiversity is very much component of that. We protect biodiversity for showing our existence, for showing our gratitude towards the surroundings. Then biodiversity continues various ecological and evolutionary processes. So this is not something that we are using, but this is our existence value. This shows that the life is existing on the earth. So biodiversity values we can interpret in different ways. Now, if I show you this slide, this I took from northeastern region. The ananas you must have seen, very sweet, fruits which are typical of that region, and they are such healthy and full of nutrition type of food that we get from the biodiversity. Of course, there are so many other things we all know which we use biodiversity day to day, but this something which attracted me when I went to northeastern region. So this was kept on the way, and it was very juicy, very nutrient and full of nutrition, and very good type of food. And likewise, when we see towards bryophytes, this is one of the bryophyte, and we think it's useless, it's growing as such, but the bryophytes, they are doing so many ecosystem services for us. They are maintaining soil fertility, they are preventing the floods, and in addition they are also absorbing heavy metals from the soil. So every component of biodiversity is doing its bit in the system. So if we destroy them, if we don't care for them, if we don't respect them, we lose many such services ignorantly or deliberately sometimes. So these services, they have negative impact on our own sustenance, as we are seeing today. So every component of biodiversity is important in one way or the other. And nowadays, you must have read, in the newspapers, in the television, the boosting of the immune system has become so very important, and all the traditional spices which we use in our day-to-day life, they have all of a sudden become very important, and Ayush Ministry of Government of India is promoting their use, because they cannot help killing the virus, but of course they boost our immune system so that our body can fight with these infectious virus, so as to keep us healthy. So in this context, you have seen curcuma longa, haldi, Ilium sativum, that is lasun, tulsi, that has decoction of tulsi is very, very important, and Piper nigrum or kali mirch. So all these spices have all of a sudden become very important, and if we take their decoction daily, it helps in boosting our immune system. Coriandrum sativum, then cinnamon, that is dalchini, and gingiber officinale, schizoium. We botanists know about them, but why have I have focused them? Because they are now are very important in our life, as if we take them daily, so they boost our immune system, and I think give us strength to fight with the microorganisms, with the infectious organisms which make us unhealthy. Yeah. Now, what are the challenges to biodiversity? Why biodiversity is depleting at a faster rate. Now, if students are there, then a very small word you can remember, that is hippo. Hippo means HIPPO. H means habitat degradation or habitat fragmentation. That is the foremost reason of biodiversity depletion. I means invasive species. Then P, two P's, one means pollution, other means population. And O means overexploitation. These are the major causes of biodiversity depletion, and they pose a challenge to biodiversity. For example, habitat fragmentation. Look at the fragmentation in one of the slide, in one of the picture. Highest level of fragmentation, where forest has been cut and has been converted into agriculture with so many partitions, so much of fragmentation. Now this type of ecosystem is focused only on one thing. It does not maintain biodiversity. So biodiversity fails in these regions. Look at the other picture, where the forest has been cut, patches of the forest have been cut, and we are left with only the fragments of the forest. Of course, many people ask that should we not progress? We should progress, but progress to the extent that we should not put 100% pressure on the biodiversity. We should use these things in a sustainable manner, so that biodiversity also lives to an extent that it does not harm us, and we also get some benefit out of environment. So there should be a balance between development and the use of the nature. So this type of fragmentation leads to depletion in biodiversity, and biodiversity components, they get killed. Animals whose houses were there in these areas, they become homeless. They start coming to the cities, and they start interacting with the human beings. Look at this second slide, that is invasive alien species. IUCN says that this is the second most serious reason of biodiversity loss. We are very fond of bringing, plants or animals from the other areas, and then we, allow them to escape in the natural environment. It's not always that human beings do it. Sometimes accidentally also, these plants or animals enter the native ecosystems. Now, again, I talk of native ecosystems because native ecosystems have great relevance in protecting the biodiversity. Now look at the first slide, which first part of the picture, that is, it's showing lantana. Lantana is a very harmful weed of forest. It hampers all the forest operations. It interferes with the regeneration of the trees. It's a very, very harmful weed, and it spreads like anything in the shivaliks of the Himalayas. And I don't know whether in your part also, if there are ranges equivalent to shivaliks, I think lantana would be there. And Parthenium, though, everybody might have seen, because Parthenium actually started from Maharashtra or adjoining part of the Karnataka, and then from there it spread to the different parts of India. And likewise, there is a blue-colored, beautiful flowered weed, which is known as Ageratum conjunctivis. Ageratum conjunctivis is also a very highly invasive weed of the agricultural fields. Look at this agriculture field of a small-scale farmer. It was lying vacant, and whole of it has been covered by Ageratum. And the farmer tries to remove it it again comes in high proportion, highly invasive. So invasive species are those species which have come from other areas, other geographical areas, which spread at such a fast rate that they hamper our own vegetation. They make our own vegetation incompetent to compete with them, and gradually they are lost and make the species vulnerable to extinction. So IUCN says that invasive species are the second most serious cause of biodiversity depletion. Incidentally, we do have a project which is NMHS project, that is National Mission on Himalayan Studies. And in this project, what we were doing is exploring invasive species in the Himalayan region. Unfortunately, now we could not go for the last 2-3 months. We used to go to Himalayas, and we have seen that Himalayas are the worst affected by the invasive species. And I'm sure that in southern part and also the western part, different parts of India have different types of invasive species which are hampering the native vegetation, the local vegetation, and we are losing many ecosystem services in this way. Now, in one of our studies on Hyptis suavilens, which is known as Vilaiti tulsi, it is very aromatic plant, but at the same time, it's very invasive. It is found in UP, in Uttarakhand, in Himachal Pradesh, in India, and maybe in southern part of India also. Now, our studies have shown that those areas which are invaded by this, they have very poor species richness, species diversity, dominance, and evenness. Evenness is proportionment of different species. Now, this weed, is very deadly. It's very harmful to the local vegetation. And likewise, Parthenium. I think every one of us know Congress grass or Parthenium. Now, Parthenium has, encroached all the plain areas of India, almost all, and it has even encroached the Himalayas. And so much so that 2 morphotypes of Parthenium can be seen as per our studies in Chandigarh, morphotype 1, morphotype 2. Now, one is more weedy, other one is more green, and it reproduces very fast. Now, both these morphotypes, they have depleted the species diversity to greater extent. And if we see this slide, this Venn diagram, we see that the central portion, which is mostly uninvaded by Parthenium, has more number of species compared to the morphotype A and morphotype B of the Parthenium found in the invaded regions. And likewise, we can see that it also reduces the diversity, the evenness, the richness of local species to a great extent. This paper was published in one of the high impact journal and has been quite good cited by the other authors. Likewise, this also shows that invaded areas, they have even more, they have more nutrients compared to the control areas, and that help them in growing fast. Now, in addition to invasive species, the other reasons which are responsible for biodiversity loss is the hunting. Hunting has been there since millennia and world over, and it has been responsible for killing of many macro animals. For example, in Eurasia, large mammal genera were destroyed 30,000 years ago because of hunting. In North America, again, mammals, they were killed by hunting. Pacific Islands, Australia, New Zealand, South America, Madagascar, Africa. All large mammals were killed because hunting can be done for fun and it can also be done for food. Fortunately, nowadays hunting is banned, but whatever loss has been done earlier, still we have not been able to fill that gap. So a lot of hunting has made many species vulnerable, many species extinct. So hunting has also been responsible for biodiversity loss. And then trade in wildlife. Trade in wildlife, illegal or legal, is legal is okay, it's fine, but illegal trade, it kills many species. Species are killed for small benefits. For example, primates, they are used in the trade. They are mostly used for biomedical research. Yeah, they are also kept in zoos, circuses, and private collections. Birds, reptiles, ornamental fish, reef corals, orchids, cacti. All these are the groups which have been used in trade to greater extent, and a large number of these species are used, and they are putting a lot of pressure on these groups, that these groups have become now highly vulnerable to extinction. We can see overexploitation also as one of the cause of biodiversity depletion. Like, if we know that this species is useful for us, then we do not bother about its existence. We only bother about our needs. Now, for example, Texas Baccata. Few years back, Texas Baccata was abundant in Himalayas. But ever since we have come to know that it's an important source of anti-cancerous drug, now that species has been brutally harvested from the Himalayan region, that it has become now critically endangered. And so is the case of one horned rhino, which is also brutally killed for its horn, which has some medicinal value. And likewise, Neopicoriza scrophulariiflora. This is one of the species which is found in the eastern Himalayas, and this is medicinally very important. I think every part of it, especially the roots, they are a source of medicine, and it is used against many diseases. Now, this plant has also become rare and endangered because of overexploitation. So, overexploitation is also one of the cause which depletes the biodiversity, and of course, pollution. The most important effect of the pollution can be seen in the coral reefs, where bleaching of the coral reefs takes place because of the dumping of the waste material in the ocean, which serve as pollutant for this. And pollution has done great harm to biodiversity. So you all know, we think that noise pollution has no effect on biodiversity, but research has shown that even noise pollution alters many ecological services. It enhances pollination and disrupts seed dispersal by the birds. Birds, do very important service for us, like seed dispersal. Now, when too much of noise is there, they forget their path, they get confused, and as a result of which the important ecological service, that is the dispersal, is also affected by the noise pollution, the studies have shown. Then, of course, population, we are already 7.8 billion, and population is the major cause of biodiversity. There is no place for biodiversity to sustain. Look at the picture shown here. So where is the place for biodiversity? Look at the huge buildings, the transport system. Where is the place for biodiversity? We're not thinking of any, animal or plant. We're thinking only about ourselves, and that disturbs biodiversity to a greater extent. Now, Indian population is already 1.3 billion, which is 17.7% of the total. And also, we are also in this direction that population has affected biodiversity in our country also, but thanks to our tradition that we love animals and although they are loved by societies world over, I'm not saying that, but yeah, of course, Indians have great passion for plants. They worship them, and in that context, many of the biodiversity components, they get conserved out of fear of God or out of any religious sanctity attached to them. So that way, we have a great role to play in the survival of some species. But otherwise, increasing population, increasing transport system, increasing urbanization, it is bad for biodiversity. Of course, consequence of all this is the climate change. And climate change has put greater biodiversity, risk on the biodiversity, risk of biodiversity loss is more in the present day context where climate is changing at a faster rate. There is shift in geographic distribution of species. There are catastrophic forest fires. There are mass bleaching of the coral reefs. They all serve as fingerprints of climate change, and they affect the biodiversity in turn. So productivity loss occurs because of biodiversity loss. Then climate becomes unstable, soil, water, then there is loss of nutrition, desertification occurs, mineralization, waterlogging, loss of livelihood to many people, loss of genetic diversity, loss of resilience of our farmers, loss of potential medicinal and industrial benefits, degradation of the traditional knowledge, vulnerability of natural disasters and global warming. All these are the impacts of biodiversity loss. So we see that conservation has become the only option for us to save our biodiversity. Now we see that already we have seen in the history 5 major extinctions. If we see the history of Earth, 5 major extinctions have destroyed biodiversity, and currently people say that in the present times we are facing extinction crisis or the 6th extinction, which is occurring at a very faster rate, that is 1000 to 10,000 greater than what it would have occurred naturally. Now if we see the background extinction, that is very, very slow. Background extinction means natural one. Speciation and extinction, they are going side by side, but extinction has presently increased because of the human activities, and that's why there is a extinction crisis world over. And now comes the story of coronavirus. The novel coronavirus, or what we call COVID-19, reported from Wuhan in China in December 2019. The latest research shows that genome of this virus is 96% identical to the coronavirus virus found in bats. So there is a reason to show that probably it has come from the bats. So bats become most likely source of coronavirus, as it was in case of SARS. Now, despite conspiracy theories and all that, most of the scientific evidence pointed to be a zoonotic disease. That is a disease which have originated from animals, as they occur at the interface between humans, animals, and environment. Now, 75% of the recent emerging infectious diseases fall in this category. Now, most of the diseases nowadays, they are zoonotic in nature. Now, COVID-19 is just one of that long list of zoonoses originating from wildlife. That is, there is an amplification effect on the wildlife, that they have become source of many diseases. Now, other never seen before outbreaks, they have Case-Novel forest disease in Karnataka, Ebola in West Africa, Zika virus in North America, and SARS in Asia in recent times. They are name a few. So many viruses and so many, some are very infectious, some are less. So they have originated from the animals, and COVID-19 is just one of that long list of diseases which have originated from the animals, and most likely the bats. Now, Johnson et al. In 2020 published a very good article showing this, that emerging infectious diseases in humans, they are caused by pathogens originating from animal hosts. They are zoonotic in nature. Zoonotic outbreaks present a major challenge to the global health. Now, they investigated the drivers of virus spillover and found that mammalian species, they are the main cause of these viruses. And it was discovered that most of the viruses, they were found in those mammals which have adapted themselves in the human populations. Now, for example, primates, bats, they're increasing in number. Bats have become very common now in the urban areas also, and these are now coming in direct contact with the humans, and as a result of which these diseases have become very common. Now, wildlife through hunting and trade also facilitates close contact between wildlife and humans. And these findings in this paper, they provide evidence that anthropogenic activities, they have caused the loss of wildlife habitat, as a result of which wildlife has entered into the human areas, and there is a direct animal human interaction, and that facilitate the zoonotic diseases, and COVID-19 is just one of them. Now, that means there is a link between biodiversity loss and emerging infectious diseases. So we can say degradation of ecosystem is the leading cause of emergence of infectious diseases, particularly COVID-19. There is a deep connection between disease outbreak and present day biodiversity crisis. So it's high time that we better manage our relationships with nature or biodiversity in particular. Now you can see, this is just a diagram created just to show you that viruses, they have less or very less or no incidence in the natural forests, which are intact. But if we have a degraded ecosystem where forest has been cut, we have greater chances of getting infectious disease. It's not that it has nothing to do with the density or what, just to show you that degraded ecosystems are more vulnerable to the infectious diseases compared to the intact ecosystems which are rich in biodiversity. Now, how the virus spills over, how virus makes its way into human population, experts have suggested that intermediate hosts like bamboo rats, badgers, or pangolins. Pangolin is most trafficked mammal in Asia. They have played a role in transferring virus from animals to humans. Now, all of a sudden, in many countries, China, for example, Africa, for example, they are using wildlife as source of food. Thankfully, I think in India we do not have that practice. In these countries, bush meat has become very popular. Bush meat has become very popular, and bush meat is an important source of cuisine in China and other parts of the world. People consume wild animals for improving their health, to get strength from the wild animals and health benefits. In China, it's a traditional Chinese medicine also, because many of the wilder animals, they also provide them health benefits. But for getting health benefits, there is a limit. We cannot eat each and every wildlife which attracts us. Now, civet cats, for example, as I already talked to you, bamboo rats, badgers, apes, pangolins, they are becoming very popular bushmeats. If you happen to go to Africa, you will find these common being sold in the market. Now, civet cats are most prized one. And we also have wet markets where fresh meat of these animals is sold, in addition to other fish and salamander. So this provides a way of spilling over of the virus to the human beings. When we talk of this bush meat, although this topic is little controversial, very complex also, because it's difficult to pinpoint, but as the number of these bush meats or these markets is increasing, many people are taking food, and they think that wild animals are powerful and they provide good nutrition to humans, and with that context they eat. So then the entry of the virus has also become very easy. So there is a strong correlation in the two things. Now, does that mean that we should not take vegetarian food or non-vegetarian food? No, it is not like that. Both vegetarian and non-vegetarian foods have their own importance. People eat them. There is no question of that this food is good or this food is bad. Both are equally important. People take them. We must respect their food habits. So there is nothing like, there is no debate between vegetarianism or the non-vegetarianism. But there is one question that we can take lesson from, that when we are vegetarian, we are again taking food from the biodiversity. Non-vegetarian also, they are taking food from biodiversity. That's not a question. But question is that vegetarian food is very important from point of view of the ecological footprint. They have a lower ecological footprint compared to the non-vegetarian food. That is the only thing. Otherwise, both foods have their own relevance. They have their own importance. There is no difference as regards biodiversity is concerned. But those people who are taking vegetarian food, they have lower ecological footprint. Or in other words, what is ecological footprint? Ecological footprint is what we take from nature, how much pressure we put on nature. So here there is lesser consumption of carbon. So as a result of which the load on the nature is lesser compared to the non-veg food. And it's not always non-veg food. In the non-veg food also there are items with less ecological footprint. So we can look for those. So food contains about 10 to 30% of households' carbon footprint. Emissions consist of carbon dioxide, oxides of nitrogen, and ammonia, methane. And meat products have larger carbon footprints per calorie compared to the vegetable products. Switching to less carbon intensive meat can also help in reducing the ecological footprint. So I hope we all now understand. I have linked ecological footprint, which is again a very important topic these days. That is how much load we put on nature. So what is nature giving to us? So if we want to relieve nature of less load, then such foods, may it be vegetarian, may it be non-vegetarian, which have less carbon footprint, they should be preferred. They should be preferred. So question is not whether we take vegetarian food, bush meat, or non-vegetarian food. Question is how much pressure we put on nature, how much diversity we destroy in this process, and how much pressure or load we put on nature. Now comes the very important aspect of biodiversity, that is, we have seen lockdown period right from March until it's the fourth lockdown, and the lockdown period has been, many people say, a boon for biodiversity. But I have prepared a cross analysis of lockdown period and biodiversity. That is, biodiversity had pros. Lockdown period had pros for biodiversity. It reduced pressure of the wild species. Animal venturing freely on the roads and beaches. You must have seen many pictures. You must have seen newspaper items. You must have seen in TV that the wild animals are coming, roaming about on the roads and beaches. There was less pollution rate, as if you see the report of from the United States. Delhi's air quality was improved a lot because of the curfew and lockdown. So there was fall in pollution rate, we can say, fall in rate of deforestation and habitat loss, although it was for 2 periods, 2 months period. This period we can think of little importance for biodiversity, restoring biodiversity, but still we could see many examples where biodiversity was flourishing better compared to the earlier time. And then fall in exploitation of rare and threatened plant species. We harvested less, we hampered less in the natural environment. Tourism was zero. So as a result of which, we see that it was positive for biodiversity. Now plants bloom in greater number. amid reduced cuttings. So these are some of the positive effect of the lockdown period on the biodiversity. Now coming to the cons also. Now I've read many papers where it is shown that it has been a bad period for conservation efforts. There was no funding. There was all of a sudden all work was all everything came to standstill. So conservation efforts became zero. Dangerous wildlife animals, they ventured into cities. For example, in Bombay also I read a news. There were this leopard moving around. Then in Chandigarh also there was news. In Punjab, different areas, leopard could roam about in the cities. It was good also, but it was bad also for the human beings. Then major research projects, they came to standstill. For example, we do have a project on NMHS, as I discussed with you. So we could not do any work during that period. So research came to standstill, which was really meant for conservation. So that work got cancelled during that period. Fall in recruitment of staff for conservation. Some of the staff in the national parks, wildlife sanctuaries are the daily wagers. They lost their, jobs. So that was a negative impact of the lockdown. Then delay in wildlife crime investigations. Investigations were going on. So though that work became delayed, then spread of misinformation was also there. Increased poaching of the wildlife. Now you'll ask me why? Because when there was no surveillance on the national parks and wildlife sanctuaries, many people made most of that equation, and there were certain reports that poaching in certain areas increased. So hunt and capture of exotic birds also increased, but that was not significant. That was to a lesser extent, but nevertheless reports were there. So these are some of the cons of the lockdown. We have discussed the pros and cons of the lockdown period. Rhino is one example that got killed as poaching attempts increase amid India virus lockdown. So this rhino is in Kaziranga National Park. It's a poor animal which is is used for various purposes. Now these are some of the pictures of wildlife reclaims the earth. Wildlife, monkeys, and other animals, they are freely moving around on the cities and also in urban areas, just as there were no human being. And sometimes we used to think that they are very surprised that where human beings have gone all of a sudden. So such reports were there. So some of the things, they were good for biodiversity, some of things they were bad for biodiversity. So we had a mixed kind of reaction. Although it's very difficult to say, because in just a period of 2 months, we cannot expect major changes in biodiversity. But nevertheless, there were scanty reports of positive for biodiversity, negative for biodiversity. So what do we conclude from all this discussion is excessive interference of humans with the environment, especially biodiversity, is putting their own life at stake. And we are really facing a crisis because of the excessive interference of man with nature. So let's be in harmony with nature. I'm not saying that we are not to touch the nature at all. We are to take services of the nature. We are to use them, but in a sustainable manner, because that is a very beautiful word. Sustainable word means we can use nature in a way that we do not harm nature and we also get some benefit. Now, let us not make animals homeless by destroying their habitats on large extent. We should neither cuddle them, we should not be cruel towards them. Let them live their life in a normal way. So they live in their own place, their own world. We live in our own world. There should be minimum interaction so that they do their own, ecosystem functions, ecological functions. We do our own ecological functions so that there is a balance in nature. Love and respect for biodiversity components. They are the gifts of nature for us. We must love them. We must respect them so that it's not our lives are not affected. So safeguarding biodiversity is essential to prevent infectious diseases or next COVID-19, as we say. So therefore, the message of today's lecture is love your nature, love biodiversity, respect it, let it grow without the interference of man. We will get definitely positive, effects. So, International Day for Biological Diversity this year had a theme, very right theme, seeking solutions from nature. Now, we should not destroy nature, we should be in harmony with nature. Rather, we should take cues or solutions from nature. We should not make nature so that it is no longer able to give us solutions. So, that is the message for today's lecture. I think that's all for today. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
Vibha.
thank you so much. Very
Yeah,
informative. Yeah, ma'am. Very
I have
informative session.
I have, I removed many things because it was becoming very lengthy. So then I reduced the length yesterday.
No, ma'am, you have
But,
covered the entire aspects from
uh,
basics of biodiversity, and you have reached to the level wherein it shows how the COVID-19 can affect the biodiversity. It was
Yeah.
really very informative, and certain questions have been posted up by the participants.
okay, I
So,
love to answer. Yes.
yes, ma'am. One of the question being posted by the participant is, what measures can be done to stop the over exploitation of birds and animals?
As I said, it's very difficult. We have different measures to stop over exploitation. One is that we should, for example, we should have a control on our needs. Like if we think about nature also, sustainably use them, then over exploitation, because greed has no limits. Sometimes we have enough for us, but out of greed we start over exploiting the things. Then
Yeah,
it
ma'am.
becomes difficult. For example, I gave the example of Texas Baccata. Texas Baccata was growing wonderfully well in the Himalayan region until we knew that it's a source of drug, anti-cancerous drug. Now, when it's all started, the companies, brutally, removed that plant from the Himalayan region without bothering about its conservation. If we need leaves, for example, or bark, for example, so why not take bark? Why cut the whole plant for this? So
Yes,
if
ma'am.
we have those limits on us, and if we take only that part of the biodiversity which is actually useful for us, and we also at the same time think about its conservation, then I think many of the problems on biodiversity would be solved. So we have to think what is really required of the biodiversity. Instead of killing the whole thing, we can only take that part, and then if we are taking advantage of some biodiversity component, we can also invest on its conservation. Now let us say we also give importance on planting of the tree in the Himalayan region. Those companies are very rich, those who are taking these such respect and love for biodiversity can be of great help to us, and we can stop over exploitation of these species.
Yeah.
We have to think, we have to educate the people, we have to create awareness for them that it's not necessary that you remove everything from it. You remove only that part which is actually useful for us, so then we can, I think, save the many useful species in this way.
Ma'am, there is another question being posted. Even I had a doubt. You have started in the beginning of the session. You have talked about the fourth biodiversity level, that is molecular diversity. Can you highlight something and talk about it?
Actually, there is only one report on this. I have picked up that report. That is, they say that when biodiversity is lost, so we lose many biochemicals, many products of the biodiversity, many molecules which are essential for us. So that means if a plant is lost, so are lost the biomolecules it was synthesizing. You know, plants are the source of diversity of chemicals, in fact, because plants cannot walk, they cannot talk. So the nature has given them wonderful chemicals which protect them. And those chemicals, we cannot even synthesize many of these chemicals. So many people, there was a report saying that we should also have one level of biodiversity, which is molecular level of biodiversity, that is unique biomolecules produced by the living organisms. So that is, it has not been accepted widely, but there is only one scanty report on this. And I think I was attracted by this report. So I always talk in my lectures on biodiversity, I talk of the fourth level. So
Okay,
it
ma'am.
has not been mentioned in the textbooks or in the
Yeah, that's the
papers
reason
at
I
large.
asked you. Yes,
There is
ma'am.
only one report, I'll tell you. So I have picked up it from there, the fourth level of biodiversity. I just liked it. So I
Yes,
speak.
ma'am.
And I'm
Yes, ma'am.
convinced also that once a plant is lost, so are lost many chemicals synthesized by it.
Exactly, ma'am. There is another question being posted that can we use some of the invasive plant species such as lantana for good use?
Yeah, there are reports that some people, because lantana has encroached the forest like anything, so there are reports that people are making furniture out of it. Some people are using it as a fuel wood. There's so many reports. But of course, so long as we have lantana, we can use it. But if we promote these goods, that means growing more lantana, so that will be a setback for conservation. So using only the existing lantana is good, but promoting its products would not be good for conservation. That is my view.
Okay, ma'am. There's another question saying, can we say that pandemic like corona, which occur at the approximate interval of 100 years, is the course of evolution which reboot our biodiversity?
It's not, we cannot say this evolution. This is, they are already there. The thing is, they are found in the animals, and for animals, they have, animals' immune system is hosting them. But when they enter into, that is something which is unnatural. When they enter into human bodies, we are not hosts of such organisms. So our immune system is not developed according to them. So they trouble us. So we cannot say this is evolution. We can say that this is loss of diversity, which is having a negative impact on humanity. Humanity never had such, immune system to host such organisms, which are already there. They have not evolved. They are already there. Only thing is they have entered into our system. And they have entered into our system because of our proximity to those animals which used to be away from us, which used to be in the thick forests. And now they have entered into our ecosystems. And our interaction with them has become more. So we are not having such body system to take care of those organisms which have entered into our body. So we cannot say this is evolution. This is, you can say, spillover from one organism to another who is not prepared for that.
Exactly. And another question being posted, how the emergence of new diseases is linked to biodiversity loss?
Yeah, it's because when we destroy biodiversity, degrade the natural ecosystems, many animals, mammals, they become homeless. They start running towards these cities. And when they run towards these cities, there are different types of people. Some think them as food, some think them for using it some other purpose. So, in this way, the interaction of man with the wildlife increases. As a result of which, they start using them differently. Food is one aspect. Selling them in the international market is another aspect. Exploring their medicinal values another aspect. So our interaction with these animals increase, as we have never used these animals for our food or for rearing. But when the interaction increases, we never thought that they might be harboring or they might be hosting many harmful infectious viruses in them. For them they are okay, but for us they are not okay. So because of degradation, because of the cutting of the forests, mammals or many wildlife, they had come closer to the humans. As a result of which, that interaction, they have jumped or they have spilled over in our body, and our body was never prepared like that. So we can say that's why the cutting of the destroying the biodiversity has played a key role in migration of some of the organisms into the cities closer to the man.
Okay,
That's
ma'am.
what.
Ma'am, the last question I'll take up from the student point of view. Please tell us something about research opportunities related to conserve biodiversity.
Yes, there are so many opportunities. In India, we have a large number of national parks and wildlife sanctuaries where the managerial posts, where the officer level posts, even smaller posts are required for conserving the biodiversity. We have 18 biosphere reserves, which are meant for education, conservation, and also providing support. And there we get lot many job opportunities for the students. Students need to be trained particularly for in this direction, and they can get the good opportunities over there. They have good opportunities in the conservation. For example, those states which have national parks, which have wildlife sanctuaries, they require managers for various purposes, for conservation purposes. So that is a good opportunity for employment.
Okay, ma'am. There's another question being posted. What is the importance of khajans and mangroves to biodiversity? We have plenty of them in Goa. So can they be used for some sustainable development of the village people too?
What you said? What was the name?
What is the importance of mangroves to biodiversity? We have
Mangrove,
plenty of them. Yeah.
mangroves.
Yes, ma'am.
Mangroves are that is the coastal vegetation. That is very important aspect of biodiversity. I think I did not cover them. They are very important forests, mangroves, and they are rich. And if we degrade them, a lot of bad effect on the society is there. For
Exactly, ma'am.
example, in Bengal, we have those. What we call mangroves are very abundant over there, and destruction in mangroves have caused enormous problems in there. They are the richest source of biodiversity, one of the richest source of biodiversity. So mangroves are very important, and they provide many
Okay.
services to the local people.
Ma'am,
Yes.
can you share your email ID so rest of the
Yes.
queries they can mail you? Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Daisy Batish, DAIZYBATISH, Daisy Batish at yahoo.com.
Yes, ma'am. So we come to the concluding session. So good afternoon, everyone. I, Vibha Gupta, consider a privilege to propose a formal vote of thanks to the resource person of today's webinar, Dr. Daisy R. Batish. I'm thankful to you, ma'am, for sharing your thoughts and set a perfect platform for this session. I'm glad that you have accepted our invitation and given us your precious time to provide key inside knowledge about biodiversity, especially with reference to COVID 19. Thank you very much, ma'am. I
I'm
express my sincere gratitude to our principal, sir, Dr. Kiran Mangaonkar, and the management of Guru Nanak Khalsa College for giving us an opportunity to organize this national webinar. Heartfelt thanks to our HOD ma'am, Dr. Swaranjit Kaur Chima, and to the entire botany staff who put their efforts in making this session a success. Also, I acknowledge the entire fraternity of Khalsa College who stood by us in conducting this online program. I am also thankful to the technical members, Mr. Aldrin, Mr. Shyam, Mr. Ashish, and the IT department. Without them, it would not have been possible for us to conduct this online webinar. Thank you all to all the wonderful participants who stayed with us till the end of this webinar. With this, we have come to the end of this session. A small request to all viewers, please fill the feedback form. Once the link will be posted to you on your email ID as well as on the WhatsApp group by evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am also thankful to the the authorities and to the organizers for inviting me for this important lecture. I really enjoyed interacting through digital means with the audience. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Ma'am. Yeah.
Okay.
Aldrin, stop streaming, please.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stop the streaming.